Good
Hello,
morning.
how are you?
Good morning.
Morning.
How you guys doing?
Doing
Good,
pretty
good.
good. Yeah. Yeah, I got my coffee going.
Oh, I'm slacking.
This is a little bit of a messaging thing. I was trying to decide which coffee cup to use, and I have an 80-second mug, and I was like, that might come off a little bit too harsh, and so I decided to go with Jerry Moran.
That's also
Good.
good because we served under the 82nd, but it was like, what's the not great battalion whatsoever? Like that nobody likes.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, that's who it was. So we're all like salty about it.
Oh.
Which we still would be nice to you, but like now when guys come to the reserve unit, they'll like have an 82nd patch and we'll just give them a hard time because we're like,
That's funny.
they
I
did
love
crazy, they did ridiculous stuff. And then as reservists too, they were like, yeah, they were always doing something ridiculous to us reservists. So we're like, okay.
For reservists. It's so funny to me. I actually had the strangest conversation once with a staffer of Senator Ernst. So she's a combat veteran. She went to Iraq. She was in the National Guard. But then when I was talking to, like, no, it wasn't a staffer, it was some other person. They were like, well, like, is she considered a veteran? And I'm like, yeah. Like, she served. And they're like, well, like, is she considered in the Army? And I was like, yeah, like the National Guard is still the Army. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I get the gray hair because my boss is in the Air National Guard and he never went overseas, but he's like, he was in 13 years. And so he is like, he's been out for a long time. And so, but he gives me a hard time because I'm in the reserve, but I'm also a veteran. And I'm like, I'm not active duty. The reserve is an active duty. So I'd serve my active duty time overseas and then came back. So I'm a veteran, but I'm doing this other thing. It's like this weird purgatory.
I love
But
it.
he gives me a hard time because I like
Purgatory.
I knew a guy that was a veteran and he always took every Veterans Day off. Like just every day. He was always gonna, and that was like his,
every Veterans Day.
huh?
I work every Veterans
Well,
Day.
it's like it's PTO. Yeah. But I was like, that's a good idea. So I started doing it. That's when my boss gave me a hard time. He's like, but it's like PTO, right?
I wish
So-
I could do that.
I bet you can. You're working for like the veterans man. who's
Yeah,
not
it should
even
be
a veteran.
mandatory.
Yeah.
Well, the funny part about it though is pretty much every day is Veterans Day for me in this job. But
Wow.
we normally have to work, like we'll do events and stuff, and so yeah, we normally just are out and about in the community, like talking about what we're doing and all that sort of thing. So
All right.
Wow.
it is what it is.
Excellent. But yeah, so I can see that every day being Veterans Day.
Yeah.
So anyway, we love to open with a story, like a funny story. And so anything you got to share, it can be from basic training or deployment or whatever you like.
Okay. A funny story. Well, 12 years in the Army and 4.5 years deployed, while spending a lot of time in bunkers. I can probably come up with a lot of funny stories. Not all appropriate for the majority of viewers. But I think I kind of have one that comes to the top of my mind. And this is just a statement. I'm really bad. I was always really bad at land navigation. This is not something you want to hear about one of your intel professionals, but I failed land nav the first time every time. And thank God you always got a second opportunity to kind of give it a go. I'm just really bad at directions and I have a hard time north, south, east, west. I'm more of a turn left, turn right kind of girl. But yeah, I'm really bad at land nav. But then I think when it comes to a funny story, it's kind of a serious story, but it has a really funny ending that I think that you guys will really connect to. My fourth deployment, I was in Kandahar, Afghanistan. And I was working in the Kandahar Field Detention Center. So I was doing intelligence support to interrogation. So it was one of the most awesome jobs I've ever had.
Wow.
And we were doing intel sharing with the Afghans, and we needed to go and link up with this guy who was head of the Afghan National Army, General Razik. And so this, believe it or not, was my first time outside the wire via ground. Intel folks, you just, especially at division level, like you just don't really go out very often. So I'm excited, like, oh, we're going out, we're going to do all this stuff. And I'm with my G2, so a lieutenant colonel, and then a bunch of generals. And so they've come with personal security detachment. And so we get on a helicopter, then we convoy, and we get to this compound, and we're looking around, and we're pointing out how this guy that we're going to visit, General Razik, had been targeted a lot by the Taliban because he was so effective. And so we had to go through security. And then when we get in, we take off all of our gear to, as a sign of trust. And there's a seating chart for everything in the military, right? And so I'm supposed to sit in one spot because I'm a sergeant first class, and there's a bunch of important officers, and so I'm just here like spectator sport, right? But then this other guy was like, "Hey, you actually have stuff to contribute. Why don't we switch places?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm drinking chai and eating peanuts, and all of a sudden, boom, everything's kind of dark, cloudy. I'm face first in this coffee table, and it's like, what just happened? And so everyone's like moving around, and like, we're trying to figure out what happened. And we get into this ante room, and then we're all looking at each other. And then the personal security detachment come in, and they were like, it was a bomber. And we're like, oh, okay. And so him and I, being the lowest ranking, we go and we clear the room, and the wall that was behind me was gone. And I was like, wow. And so we go, and everything was clear. And so we start shaking out our gear and throwing it on, and we're getting out of there. And everybody made it out, and we get back to the trucks, and then we convoy back to base, and we're just like, whoa, what just happened? And it turned out to be a suicide bomber. And so this suicide bomber had been coming onto the compound for months, talking about his sister, and his sister was kidnapped by the Taliban, and he needed help and all this. And so they became complacent with him, and they began to trust him. That day, knowing that the Americans were there, he managed to infiltrate the compound with 6 pounds of HME under his armpit.
Oh,
wow.
And exploded himself right on the other side of the wall for me. So it was the couch, a wall.
Yeah.
Luckily, there were no deaths, no American deaths. He was the only guy that died, thank God. We had a couple Purple Hearts, but I didn't have a scratch on me.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the serious part of the story, and I love to talk about it because people, aren't always comfortable with that, and I think it's good to share what people go through overseas. I think it's healthy. I've had therapy, and I've talked about it, and I think it's really healthy for the American people to understand what people go through over there. Not just Afghanistan, but Iraq and other wars back in Vietnam. I think it's important. But to get to the funny part of the story, so this lieutenant colonel that was my G2, she is one of the strongest women that I've ever met in my life, and she had done some really badass stuff, and I was really lucky to have her as a mentor. And so we get back, and she was like, they give you quarters, like you're not supposed to leave the base, and they monitor you, and my head got rocked, but that was it.
Yeah.
So she was like, go get changed. And I was like, into what? And she's like, your PTs. And I'm like, for what? And she's like, we're going on a run. We're going to run this anxiety out. So she makes me go on like this, I can't remember if it was like 5 or 7 mile run, right? Just to run out the anxiety. And then we get done with that, and I am smoked. And this woman's a badass. And I'm just like, God, and I was in really good shape. I could run like a 7-minute mile, but she smoked me. And so we get back, and then we're not done. She makes me do pull-ups just to make sure all the anxiety was out.
Man, savage.
And then to top it all off, she made it so that I had a nice steak dinner that evening. She was like, we get blown up, we're going to have a steak dinner. And so it was a pretty cool ending to that pretty serious story. But that's a funny story that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I got blown, there's a couple funny parts to when I got blown up. I was in a truck that got hit by an IED. And one thing was I had chocolate milk and Cocoa Puffs at the DFAC afterwards. Someone was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I can't drink scotch right now.
Yeah,
So I'm going to have
exactly.
this." And then the other funny thing was we got hit in an area where we had somewhat accidentally pushed a donkey into a hole in the ground in a previous mission. And we were talking about that donkey at the second the IED went off, because we were talking about, oh, this is where, so-and-so used the arm to get the donkey out of the way of the road because it was standing in the road in the way. And we're trying to get through. And so he coaxed it with the interrogation arm to like kind of, hey, get out of here. And so he accidentally pushed it and it fell into a little hole next to the road that was just deep enough it couldn't get out. We're like, okay, well, he's stuck. So we drove away. So we're talking about that. And we're like, yeah, the donkey's probably mad at us. It probably joined the Taliban. And someone was like, yeah, it's probably going to bomb us. And then boom, that's when the IED went off.
Oh, no.
Kid you not.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, which Nick, I think, was on that.
Bomber.
Yeah, I think Nick was on that mission. I think he probably never heard that part of the story. But
Yeah, I don't remember hearing that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, it's funny. Yeah, funny how this humor right with insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if you can't laugh about it, then it'll drive you crazy. It'll seriously get to you, and you can't take it too seriously, because at the end of the day, you're still alive. I always say I still have all my limbs. Like, why can't I make a joke about it? Like,
Right. And like you said, just being able to talk about it can be healing in itself. So
yeah,
it's good.
Yeah.
Well,
PACT Act.
So I like to make sure that it's called the Robinson PACT Act.
Okay.
A lot of people drop that first part off, but I think it's important because Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, also from Ohio, like me, was a hero and is believed to have died from illnesses associated with toxic exposure. So I think it's always important that we make sure and attach his name to it. We did that very intentionally. But the overall intention of the bill is multifaceted. When we think about, but it actually needs to start with how the idea for the bill came about. I think that's important, because a lot of times you'll hear about bills that don't really do anything. And I believe that there should always be a policy problem being addressed with legislation. And this is an instance in which that really happened. Every year, VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations, come before the Senate and the House Veterans Affairs Committees. It's a big joint hearing, bicameral, and the VSOs testify as to what their organization's legislative priorities are going to be for that year, or that Congress for that matter, because sometimes it takes a couple of years to get things done. Mm-hmm. So for the last couple of years, we've heard from nearly every single service organization that toxic exposure and addressing the broken process the VA has is their number one priority. So we heard that very loud and clear. And we actually started our process for addressing it a few years ago when Senator Moran was chairman. We did a roundtable and had a lot of people come in, talk to us about, what are the overall issues and things of that nature. And so what we learned was, we needed for VA to have a new process in which they address what we call a presumption of service connection. Because there was no congressionally mandated timeframes in which the secretary had to make decisions. So that's problematic, right?
Okay, yeah.
And then we also knew that for each generation, it was different. And so there was different studies for different cohorts and things like that. And so we needed to make it more equal for all of the different cohorts. And then we knew that we needed to do something with the expansion of healthcare. Post 9/11 veterans get 5 years of free healthcare. However, when it comes to toxic exposure, illnesses and diseases, sometimes they don't manifest until 8 to 10 years after, or even longer, right? Mm-hmm. And so we thought it important to make sure that we address that. So the intent of the bill was multifaceted. It was actually a culmination of about 10 separate bills with different congressional intent to address a variety of complex problems for multiple generations of toxic exposed veterans. And I will say 2 of those bills I worked on personally for Senator Moran, with Senator Moran. And one is the TEAM Act. It was actually the original bill to address comprehensively issues associated with toxic exposure. And the TEAM Act is something that the senator worked on with Senator Tillis from North Carolina, and as well as more than 30 VSOs. It was a coalition called the TEAM Coalition, Toxic Exposure in the American Military Coalition. And so this was, a litany of ideas on how best to address it. And so the TEAM Act is included within the Robinson PACT Act, as well as Senator Moran's idea to expand healthcare for post 9/11 veterans from 5 years to 10 years, and do an open enrollment for those that may have been missed in that process. And so, sorry, that's kind of a long-winded
that's what we need. That's what we like.
But I mean, this bill is noted as the largest expansion in the history of VA legislation. So I think it's important to make sure to address. And I will say the one thing too that we found important is to include a screening for veterans enrolled at VA, because you just don't know what you're exposed to until you start talking about it with someone who's an expert, right?
Yeah.
And then also training for VA employees to make sure that they're addressing this in the best, most efficient way possible. So that was
Awesome.
That's like the list of intent that we had for the bill.
No, that's great. That's good information. So I guess for to go from there, where is a good place for our listeners, veterans in general, to get this information?
That's a great question. So I will say that in the bill, we mandated that the VA maintain a website with information on toxic exposure. They've already done a really great job with building a website. So it's va.gov/PACT. And the amount of information in there is incredible. And it explains how the bill expands it explains what is expanded for each generation. It's pretty comprehensive. So there's that, but then also a lot of people don't know that. So VA is federal level, right? But each state has a veteran services director. So state level, and they oversee like cemeteries and state homes and things like that. But then they also are very, very connected with all of the resources available in each state. And they have service officers who do claims, and they do this for free. As well as VSOs, all the different VSOs, VFW, American Legion, DAV, like all these folks are so helpful. What I will say is, be careful with, who you talk to. There's a lot of people that try to take advantage of veterans. And so I would say definitely reach out to VSOs first, or a state level Department of Veteran Services would be my recommendation.
Okay. Awesome.
But a lot of people also don't think about contacting the member of Congress. Members of Congress have people that are really helpful as well. They have caseworkers that assist with federal agencies, and they're all familiar with ways to submit claims, ways to get information. And so you can find your representative literally by going to a website that says Find My Representative, and you can type in your zip code and find who your member is from the House, but then also you can Google who your 2 state senators are.
Okay. All right.
Wow. Okay. And then kind of rolling off of that, what would be the best way for veterans to utilize this? Would it be kind of going through the VA?
So the best way to utilize the benefit?
Yeah.
Within a couple of different things. I would say be proactive. Even starting while you're in the military, getting checked out. If you feel like your lungs just aren't quite right, if you're coughing, any kind of respiratory symptoms, I would say get checked out. I know that's not normal for folks in the military to do, but you're not going to be in the military forever, and it's better to be proactive and take care of yourself. And I would say, take advantage of that healthcare. A lot of times I hear from veterans, oh, I don't want to take something away from another veteran. That is not the case here.
Yeah.
The VA has an extreme amount of resources. They have the second largest budget in the United States government. And the committees have done a lot of work. These members of Congress work together really well. They put politics aside, and they really, really put a lot of thought into making sure that VA has all the resources it needs to take care of veterans. And so if someone thinks they're taken away from someone else, they're not. They really are not. And so I would say go to your local VA medical center. They have these environmental health coordinators, and that's on the healthcare side. So you can go and you can ask to see one of them. You can, gather information from their website. I mean, overall, I would say be proactive.
Yeah.
Get yourself checked out. We're told the DoD and the VA talk about approximately 3.5 million veterans of the post 9/11 generation may have been exposed to a burn pit, or what people don't talk about is particulate matter. So particulate matter is something like if anyone was ever in Kandahar, Afghanistan, there's the poo pond, right? And so this is where feces goes, right? And I know it's kind of nasty to talk about, but if you burned feces, if you were at a COP or somewhere very, very remote, like there's particulate matter that could be in the air. And also it's a third world country, right? And so they don't have the same kind of rules that we have when it comes to air pollution. So I would just say be proactive, and even if you weren't near a burn pit, still get checked out. I mean, there's a free screening, and so take advantage of that thing that we've put in place for us to try and tackle these things before they become bigger issues.
Yeah, thank you for saying a couple of those things, because we can't stress enough, one, to get checked, because sometimes I know for me, I've noticed like little things, and then you shrug it off, you move on. But when you start talking to other veterans, you're like, oh wait, that's happening to you too? Oh, well, maybe this is a thing and I should go. So being proactive, thank you for saying that. And then also, a lot of people don't think about the level of pollution. I'd tell people about how at night I could turn on my flashlight. I was in northern Afghanistan, so not even down in Kandahar.
Ooh.
I could turn on my flashlight at night, and it looked like it was snowing from all the particles in the air. And that was like every night. That wasn't just in the winter or summer. That was every night. If I turn on the light, and then I remember there was a dead bird caught in barbed wire, and it was preserved the entire 9 months we were there. I don't know what that says about the air quality. Yeah, Nick remembers. It was right by our CCP. Is how I remember that. But it was just, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. So it didn't matter where you were. And some people say, oh, it was a third world country. How do they have that much pollution? Because they're thinking like, oh, they don't have as many cars or buildings. And it's like, well, they also have no EPA.
Yeah. 100% true.
And then a lot of the cars are older, not all, but a lot of cars are older.
Yeah.
So who knows what they've done to keep that car running, and probably has no catalytic converter or anything like that. So
I definitely don't know what that is, but
it's in your exhaust system and it cuts down on emissions.
I'm jealous. I never made it to the northern part of Afghanistan. I heard that it was beautiful up there.
Yeah,
it was.
I agree. I sent pictures to friends at like the mountains. One friend that skis a lot was like, oh, that'd be an amazing ski resort if it weren't for the war. And I was like, that and a few other things. But yeah, aesthetically, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I guess what are any, if there are any, limitations of the bill?
Oh man, there are many.
Okay.
There are many. So I would say this is the largest expansion of VA healthcare and benefits. So this would be difficult on its face, all by itself. But Congress also within the bill mandated timeframes for enactment. So this is great for veterans, but this is going to be really difficult for a bureaucracy as big as the VA to move quickly. That everybody will tell you no piece of legislation is perfect. And so I think that, we're gonna see pretty soon some issues caused by how the legislation was written. So we'll be having to legislate a little bit more to fix that and give the VA the authority that it needs, so that it can. The biggest thing that my boss cares about, honestly, and that I care about as well, like very deeply, is the right care for the right veteran at the right time. And this is critical, making sure that each veteran gets exactly what they need at the location that they need it in a timely manner. And so we're hoping that the VA is able to enact this legislation without interrupting services to other veterans. I think that so that's on the healthcare side, right? Mm-hmm. And on the benefit side, I think that the claims processing might be a little slower for some time. We may see the claims backlog climb. So the backlog is a claim that is in the queue for any longer than 125 days. So that could climb. And that could cause a delay in benefits payments. And so that's some limitations that we will likely see in the coming months. And so we're all over it. The senator has talked about how this is a priority for him and the oversight of the implementation of this bill. So that's what we're going to be doing for the foreseeable future, trying to help mitigate some of these things so that veterans don't feel any kind of negative impact.
What is your advice to a veteran or service member looking to employ this benefit? Would it be like kind of start getting like your DD 214? I'm assuming you probably need that for.
I mean, if I had advice, I would say kind of to what I was saying earlier. I would say jettison the thought process of not wanting to seek care because you're going to take away from another veteran. Get rid of it, jettison it, get rid of it. It's just not true. And then I would say ask for help. I know that that's not easy for a lot of military folks to do, myself included, but I've gotten better at it over the years since I got out in 2015. And there's the universe of resources and just people who are experts in this stuff. It is like something that a lot of people will never understand. It's incredible. And I feel really lucky to work in this space every day. But I would say ask for help. Go to that state level Veteran Services Department. Look at VSO's websites. Go to an American Legion, and ask around. And just be productive and proactive and do the screenings and hopefully catch something before it becomes problematic. That's honestly my advice.
We thank you for listening, and we hope you got something helpful out of this.
Right now, the best way to support us is to simply spread the word. If you know a fellow veteran who could use some resources to elevate their life, send them our way.
Until next time, remember to check your 0s, 5s, 10s, and 25s.